Hi, welcome back to IATEFL Online. I'm Andy, this is Nick. We're here with the wonderful Alan Mamie.
Hi, Alan.
Alan, you're giving a talk today.
Well, I'm sharing a talk with
talk.
Adrian Underhill, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your talk?
Yeah, well, it's something we've been sort of working on over the last year or two, actually, and it's really about the fact that teacher training tends to prepare people for what is expected to happen. You know, so you have all the, the skills and the knowledge of pedagogical knowledge and so on. But of course, in the classroom, it doesn't happen like that. So what happens in the classroom is largely unpredictable. You can have a nice lesson plan, and step one goes very well, but after that, it's anybody's guess what will happen. So what we're looking at is, we call it the dark matter of classrooms. So it's a bit like in the Milky Way, there's all this dark matter, which is there, but you can't see what's going on. And our idea is that we really ought to start talking about this more in terms of teacher preparation, so that we talk about preparedness rather than preparation. Preparation is for something that you think is going to happen. Preparedness is being prepared for anything that happens. So,
and is that kind of similar to something like dogme, so that something unexpected happens and you go with it? And
yeah,
turn it into
it's
a lesson?
congruent with dogme. Although we're not sort of dogme specialists or anything. But we are really thinking about how you prepare teachers for this lack of certainty in the classroom, because at the moment it's hardly ever touched upon.
And what do you recommend? Can you tell us a few things?
Well, we're talking about actually in teacher preparation programs having certain elements built in, like for example spontaneous improvisation, for instance, theatre games, work with voice, work with critical incidents, with filmed critical incidents in the classroom. And actually talking about this issue, because there isn't a one way of doing this,
right.
but at least getting a kind of mental set towards it, which doesn't really exist at the moment. People tend to think, okay, I've got my CELTA or my Delta or whatever it's called these days, and I'm there, I've done it, But then, of course, once you get into the classroom with a group of live people, something else is happening.
It sounds really interesting, especially the part on having this on a training program, because I think this preparedness comes with experience, and it gets easier and easier, I hope, I think. So what you're saying is that we can start people off with this. I think that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about this, people say there are like two main reactions. The first one is, well, teachers are born, not made. So, they'll be able to do this. The good ones will be able to do this. Or what about the others, And the other response is, well, as they get more experience, so they will learn to do this, which
the
is
others will
to
go
some
into
extent
management,
to some extent true, But there's a third way, which is to say, look, we can actually introduce some of this, at least, in initial training. It ought to be a component. It's not the only thing. You still need background information. You need knowledge about the language. You need knowledge about methodology. You need the skills, pedagogical skills for the classroom. But then there's all this other stuff that never gets dealt with.
It's difficult to make those kinds of things happen, though, isn't it? So that they can experience them. You can't sort of spontaneously make something unpredictable happen. We're going to make something unpredictable happen just there.
Well,
and see how
you can do it, though, in training sessions to some extent. I mean, clowning is a very good example, actually. I don't mean circus clowning, I mean theatre clowning. And in fact, we're starting off with a clip of two improvisations. One is a musical improvisation between two jazz musicians, and the other one is between two people on a clowning course. And they don't know, neither of them knows what's going to happen. And something does happen. And it's only because they are able to relate to each other that they can make it happen.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you mentioned it before with the improvisation, and you said theater, and it's also in music, and you're a musician, and you do get training on how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can't. I mean, you
have guidelines.
Yes,
sort of.
I mean, you can't sort of explicitly teach how how to improvise. Right, improvise now, but you can put people into the frame of mind where they're able to do it.
Yes.
So that's the big thing we're talking about.
But it is a fact that some people just can't. Some people are very good musicians who can't improvise, and maybe it is just the kind of person that you are. I guess the classic definition between the two is the difference between a jazz musician and a classical musician who can interpret the dots incredibly well, whereas the jazz musician just takes the dots and creates something different from them.
But I mean, if you I think you draw too strict a line between the classical musician and the jazz musician there. I mean, if you think about composers like Mozart, for example, I mean, it was improvised, a lot of it. Okay. It's only written down afterwards. Yeah. Handel.
And Bach, particularly.
Bach. All of them.
We're talking about classical.
Yeah, we're getting a long way off.
Actually,
I used to be a clown too.
Yes, I did. I can see that.
Oh, I have a red nose in my bag.
Do you? Have you got any stills? Because I haven't walked on stills for a very long time.
Yeah.
Alan, you mentioned that you wrote a chapter for a book, Earl Stevick. Can you tell us a little bit about that chapter?
The chapter was called Winnowing the Past. And the idea was to look back at what people, traditional practices, which have largely been, dealt with very negatively. I mean, people say, translation, we don't do translation, we don't do reading aloud, we don't do memorization, we don't do all of these things. But actually, provided those things are done in the right way, they're very, very valuable. And so I was looking at a whole series of these things in this chapter. Okay. Briefly, that's what it's about. Right. Yeah. But the whole book I mean, there are chapters on any number of things, and the whole point of it was to honor Earl Stevick, who is still alive, but is not in good health. And it's nice that they got it out in time for IATEFL, so it's CEP, it's on the stand. Yeah.
It sounds like a really interesting chapter, because I agree with that as well. A lot of things that have gone out of style, I think you take the best bits.
ELT seems to be a bit it has this kind of tunnel vision. It's like, here's the new thing,
it's
everything
always,
else is gone.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I joined, 50 years ago, whatever it is, people have always been looking for, what's the new thing, what's the new thing? Well, new things are good, but there's some, virtue in looking at the old things as well.
Right. Again, principled eclecticism, where you take bits from each one.
But I mean, look at Mario and Paul Davis's book, on dictation. Say, okay, you take a practice like dictation, which people say, a very old-fashioned dictation. I don't do dictation, but you can they found 74 different ways of doing it. So you can take an old idea and look at it afresh. Yes. And even if you don't look at it afresh, you can do it in a certain way that makes it valuable.
Okay, we're going to have to wind up in a minute.
Okay,
I just wanted to say congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award. How does it feel to have a Lifetime Achievement Award?
Well, as I said, it's rather a two-edged compliment.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
The suggestion is that maybe it's all over,
Well, clearly from what you're telling us here, there's still time to get another one.
I don't know about that, but anyway, yes.
Okay. Thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And thanks. Stay tuned. In a minute, we've got the IATEFL scholars
is that it
coming
now?
to talk
to
us.
Almost.
And so stay online. Yeah, don't go away.